Hi.
Hi, Venkat.
Hi, Amit.
Hi, Venkat.
Okay. Okay, fine. So it's yeah. So in the current session, we'll try to understand about how exactly Informatica Power Center works. Okay, great. Now, after the last session, we have talked about like what is a data warehouse. Okay, what is the purpose of data warehouse, and what are the Informatica Power Center works in the current session. Okay, now when it comes to Informatica Power Center, it's a data integration tool. It's a data integration tool which reads the data, from source systems, transforms the data into the required business format, and loads the data into the target and loads the data into target at any business, at any speed. So in the last session, we have already seen like we have basically multiple source systems will be there where the business data will be present. So whenever any customer of the business does the transaction, so these transactions will be basically stored in the source systems, so these source systems are called OLTP systems. Now, when you perform the transactions, all the transactions were stored within this OLTP systems. Now, in order to understand how exactly the business is running, what do? We need to keep the data in the data warehouse. So this is the data warehouse. So the data warehouse is nothing but it is a process, or it's a theory which is created on top of the database in order to understand how the business is running. Okay, so the data warehouse will always tell you like how the business is running and how exactly the profits are present, the loss is present, how the business expansion is done, and which is the top product and who are the profitable customers. So in order to take any kind of strategic decision or any kind of business decision, we require the data warehouse data. Now, how do we get the data into the data warehouse is that we have to use the ETL here. We have to basically do the process of ETL. So what is meant by ETL? Extraction, transformation, and loading. The data that is present in the different source systems, we are extracting it. This is called as a data extraction, and transform the data into the required format and load the data into the data warehouse. So this is what we call it as ETL process. So in order to create this ETL process, we require certain ETL tools like Informatica Power Center is the ETL tool, a data stage, SSIS. So we have multiple other ETL tools that we have in the market. So Informatica Power Center is one such ETL tool. Okay, so it's a data integration tool which reads the data from any kind of source system. So when I say source system or any kind of source system, it could be anything. It could be the source system could be it could be, yeah, it could be any relational database, it could be any flat file, it could be any XML, it could be any kind of SAP or mainframes, AS400. So you might have data at any place at any point of time. So Informatica Power Center has the plugin adapters to the special sources, and you can connect to any kind of source to read the data, transform the data according to the transformations present, and load the data into the any kind of target. So you can read the data from SAP and load the data into SAP. You can read the data from mainframes and load the data into mainframes. Okay, and you can read the data from a relational table and you can load the data into the flat file. So you can read the data from any point of time, from any point of place, and load the data into any target. So Informatica Power Center is nothing but it's a data integration tool which does ETL process, extraction, transformation, and loading. Now, how does the Informatica Power Center work is that it works, it is created based on a service-oriented architecture. So we have different types of services that can be configured in the Power Center, and mostly it requires two different services called as repository service and integration service. Repository service and the integration service. So we'll try to understand how these services are created, what is this service about, but what we need to understand is that it's a SOA, service-oriented architecture, where you have a lot of services are present that needs to be configured in order to perform the ETL process. Now, Informatica Power Center, as I told you, there are two job roles are there. One is Informatica Developer, another one is Informatica Admin. So, if you're working as an Informatica Developer, you have to work on 4 different client tools. Okay, so these 4 different client tools are a repository manager, designer, workflow manager, and workflow monitor. So these are the 4 different client tools that we have it. So all these 4 different client tools that you see here, as an Informatica developer, you will only work on these 4 different client tools in order to create the ETLs. So when an Informatica admin comes, so Informatica admin will always work on a tool called as Informatica Admin Console. So we'll see what are these tools are about. Okay, and yeah, so Informatica admin will always work on the Informatica Admin Console in order to perform any kind of admin related activity. Okay, Informatica developer will predominantly work on these 4 client tools in order to create the ETLs. Okay, now, so this Informatica Power Center is from a company called as a Informatica Corporation. Informatica Corporation. So you have a lot of other tools from Informatica Corporation, like you have data quality is one tool, data quality. Informatica Power Center is another tool, and you have Informatica Power Exchange is another tool, Power Exchange, and you have master data management, Informatica master data management, and you have Informatica ultra messaging system and Informatica cloud. So these are all the different products that we have from Informatica Corporation. Okay, these are all the different products. Like you totally have more than 250 products for there, which are released from Informatica Corporation, and all these different products play a major role in the data warehousing environment as well as other environments. Okay, so Informatica Corporation is basically founded in 1992 and Los Angeles. Okay, so all these different products that we see here, they work in a different way. I mean, data quality is the product itself. So what is the purpose of data quality? This data quality product, basically it is used to find the quality of the data. It is used to find the quality of the data, means how exactly the quality is present. For example, see, for example, you might know about this thing. I mean, you can see that from the source system, you read the data and load the data into the data warehouse. Now, if the data within this source system, if it is bad, you finally end up having the error data in the data warehouse. Okay, so for that purpose, you have to check how the quality of the data present in these OLTP systems, right? So you have to check like how much percentage of data is good, means either it is 50% data is good, or 100% data is good, or 10% data is good. So what percentage of data is good, you can identify, or you can check basically by using the you can by using the data quality tool. Informatica data quality tool is there. There also you create some mappings in order to check how much quality of data is present, and create the rules and create the mappings in order to convert that unquality data into the qualified data. So data quality tool will always work before the Informatica Power Center job starts. Okay, so data warehouse is a downstream job of data quality. You can say that. Okay, whatever. I mean, so likewise, you have different other tools for there, like a Power Center. We know it's a ETL tool, and you have Power Exchange. So Power Exchange is something like when you have special sources like SAP, or mainframes. MDM developers are different, or data quality developers are different, So you have, yeah, so you have basically different types of data, and you have different tools which handles those information. Okay, so that is about how you have the different tools and the different tools from Informatica Corporation. Yes. Any
Venkat, this
questions
is,
so far? Yeah.
yeah, I have one. So MDM is used for big data management. So that is a tool we need to use it for big data purpose. If I'm using Informatica as a backend.
No, 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 not like that. So MDM, you use it in order to maintain the single version of code. See, for example, you have three different systems are there. Okay, for example, you have Airtel database, Airtel prepaid database, Airtel postpaid database. Okay, and Airtel, what is this? Internet provider is there. What is it called? Broadband. Yeah, broadband is there. So I'm the customer of Airtel in all these three things. Okay, my name is there like in one place I have it is there like Venkat. Another place I have like Venkatesh. In another place I have like Ven. So what we do is that, what is the purpose of MDM is that it brings the data from all these three records, from all the three different databases, and brings the data to MDM hub. Okay, it brings the data to MDM hub, and within the MDM hub we compare the data with some truthful database, or whatever the legacy. Yeah, so truthful database, for example, let's say Naukri is the database that we have, and this is, I mean, people tend to keep their true information in the Naukri. Okay, so we compare this data with the Naukri, and we check that if there is, I mean, if all these three records are same or not. So what we do is that we compare the data and we identify all these three records are same, and we correctly update the data. So Venkatesh, I'll just update this data back to all the three different sources. Okay, so MDM, how it is used here? It is used to match and merge. So it is matching with the legacy. It is matching with the truthful database and merge that information and push it back to the source system. So you're maintaining single version of code or single version of truth in all the different source systems, in all the different systems. Okay, are we clear? Are we clear on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, to arrive at the single version of the truth, wouldn't that require data quality measure first?
See, I mean, using MDM also we can do data quality up to a certain measure, certain level, but not completely. But the purpose of tool is completely different. So
Okay.
data quality is to perform the data. I mean, is to identify the quality of the data. But MDM is for maintaining the single version of code, single version of truth.
Okay.
Ideally, using this particular tool also you can perform the data quality, but only up to a certain extent.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So that's how it works. All right. Okay. So any more questions on this? Any more questions on this? Okay, fine. So as we understood already that these are the four different client tools that we have, and all these different client tools will work in a different way and will work for different things where the Informatica developer will use in order to create the ETLs, right? So what is meant by ETL? So ETL is nothing but ETL process is nothing but extraction, transformation, and loading process. So this ETL process within Informatica Power Center, this ETL process within Informatica Power Center, it is called as mapping. Okay, it is called as mapping. So ETL process in other ETL tools, it is called with a different name. Means when it comes to Ab initio, it is called as graph. When it comes to Informatica, it is called as mapping. When it comes to SSIS, it is called as package. So we have a different name for every ETL process in different tools. Okay. Now this is called as a mapping. So what is meant by mapping? Mapping is nothing but it's a logical representation of the data flow. It's a logical representation of the data flow from source to target. Logical representation of the data flow from source to target. So this is what you call it as ETL process. Now for creating this mapping or ETL process, you require the source, definition, you require the transformation to transform the data, and you require the target definition in order to load the data. So this is how the mapping works. The data from the source is extracted, it is transformed according to the transformation and loaded into the target. So how do you use these three objects within the mapping within these client tools? By using these client tools, we basically use them. I mean, we basically create the mappings as well as execute them using these four client tools. Okay, so let's try to understand like how exactly these four client tools are useful. Okay, so we'll just see the basics about this. I mean, how the client tools are basically present and how they are basically useful, and practically we'll see it going forward. Okay, right. Now the first client tool is Power Center Repository Manager. Power Center Repository Manager. So what is this Power Center Repository Manager? So all the client tools that you see here, all the different client tools that you see here, they are GUI based client tools. What is meant by GUI? Graphical user interface based, means you're not going to write any code or something. You're not going to write any code. So you will have to use the user interface with your mouse, okay, and do the stuff. Okay, so repository manager is also a GUI based client tool. GUI based client tool. Then what do we do here? Using this, we create the folder. Okay, we can perform the migration activity. Okay, and you can assign the permissions. So these are the three things that you can do as a part of the repository manager. You can create the folder, you can perform the migration, and you can assign the you can perform the migration of the data, and you can assign the permissions. Okay, so what is meant by folder? See, basically, in order to create the mappings, within the Power Center, we need a place where you can create. So that place is called as a folder. So folder is nothing but it's a package, or it's a container where all mappings will basically reside. So when you create a folders, you can create the mappings within that. Okay, so that is the reason folder is important. For example, let's say I am working on a retail project. I want to create all the sales related ETLs or sales related mappings. So for that, what I'll do, I'll create a sales folder. If I want to keep all my finance related mappings, then I'll create a finance folder. Okay, likewise. So folder is always used in order to keep all the mappings. Okay, and then you have another option called the migration. You can perform the migration. How can you perform the migration? By using the repository manager, you can perform the migration. So migration means you are going to deploy the code from one environment to another environment. So that is called as a migration. And we have something called as assigning the permissions. What is meant by assigning the permissions? There are three types of permissions are present. One is read, write, and execute. So these three types of permissions we can assign to a user. Means I am a user, you are a user, and other person. So there are, developers are considered as users. So on top of a particular folder, let's say sales is a folder that we have. So I can access, okay, you can access, everyone can basically access the folder, but in order to create the mapping, you require the other permissions. So those permissions can be assigned by using the repository manager tool. So that is the functionality of the repository manager. Okay, and then designer. What is the purpose of designer? Okay, this is also GUI based client tool where mappings can be designed here. Mappings can be designed. Okay, so how do you design the mappings? How do you basically design the mappings? You can design the mappings, by having the source, target, and the transformation. So when you have these three objects, you can basically design the mapping. Now, how do you get the source? How do you get the target? See, for example, let's say Power Center is a separate application, Informatica Power Center, and the tables are basically present in the database. Okay, how do you get the tables from the database to the Power Center? You need something called as a ODBC connection. Okay, so using the ODBC connection, open database connectivity, using this, the tables can be brought into the Power Center and create the mappings. Okay, right, and create the mapping. So this is how the designer will basically work. So you bring the tables from the database to the Power Center and you can start creating the mappings. So this is the place where the designer is the place where you can create the mappings by using the designer tool. And you have a lot of transformations are also present in the designer, lots of transformations. So every transformation will basically work in a different way, and there are lots of transformations that are present where you can transform the data based on the requirement. And you have Power Center Workflow Manager. So what is the Power Center Workflow Manager? So this is the particular tool. This is the particular tool where two components are created. Two components has to be created here. So what are those two components? They are session as well as workflow. So these are the two components which can be created here. What is meant by session? Session is nothing but a task. Session is a task which runs the mapping. It basically runs the mapping. And you have workflow. Workflow is nothing but another task. Workflow is another task. It's a start task which runs the session. Okay, so it's just a kind of hierarchy. For example, so within the designer you create the mapping. So for every mapping that you create, you need to create one session. That is a mandatory rule. Okay, which means for running the mapping you need to create a session. For running the session you need to create a workflow. So workflow will run the session, and what does the session contain? Session contains the mapping. Session basically contains the mapping. So that's how it works. Okay, so workflow runs the session and session contains the mapping. Okay, so that is the importance of Power Center Workflow Manager. Okay, so you can create these two tasks which runs the mapping. And the Power Center Workflow Monitor. So you can see the tool says, the name itself says, so this is the place where jobs can be monitored. Jobs can be monitored here. Monitored means, so when you run a particular workflow or when you run a particular ETL job, then you can identify within this Power Center Workflow Monitor tool, like you can see like whether the job is successful or failure, what is the log information, why it is failed, what is the error message, whether it is regarding the database or regarding the network or regarding the Power Center. So which causes the error, which causes the issue. You can troubleshoot the issue based on the error message present in the Workflow Monitor. So that is the importance of Workflow Monitor tool. So these are the four tools that we have here, and these four tools will be predominantly used by the developer in order to do the ETL activity. Now let's see them. So you can see these are the four client tools: repository manager, designer, workflow monitor, and workflow manager. So these are the four client tools. See, let's open the repository manager. So this is the place where you can design where you can create the folders. See here, I'm going to just show you like how to create it. Yeah, so this is the place where you can create the folder. You can create the folder, you can what you can do, you can assign the permission. What kind of permission? You can see there are three types of permissions for present: read, write, and execute. Read means you can just view the ETLs. Write means you can edit the ETLs as well as you can create the new ones. Execute means you can run the jobs. So these permissions are required for a particular user in order to do any kind of activity in the Power Center. Okay, so this is the place where you can do, and you have something called as the deployment group. So this is the place, or this is the concept where you can perform the migration activity. Okay, see, we are just seeing all these options just on a higher level. So once we go into the practical scenarios, then you can understand how these exactly work. Okay, right. So this is about how the Power Center Repository Manager work. You can perform the deployment, you can create the folder, and you can start creating the ETLs within that. Okay, so this is about that repository manager. And the other tool that we have is the designer. See, in order to go into the designer, you have so these four are the places. So these four are the client tools. You can navigate from one client tool to another client tool by using this: repository manager, designer, workflow manager, and workflow monitor. So these four are the client tools that we have. Now, when I click on designer, you can see the designer is automatically open, and you can start creating the ETLs here. You can start creating the mappings. Okay, so this is basically the mapping. You can see that. So you have the source definition where you can read the data from, and these are all the different transformations that we have. Okay, and you have the target definition. So this is the target definition that you have. So when you run this particular mapping, the data from the source will be extracted, transformed according to the transformation that you see here, and it is loaded into the target. So this is the source and this is the target. Okay, so you can create a lot of mappings, and you can see these are all the different types of transformations that were there. So each transformation work in a different functionality, and based on the requirement, we need to use those transformations. Okay, so that is how the mapping is present. Okay, so the mapping has lots of sources, and we can import a lot of targets based on the requirement, and we create the mapping here. So Power Center Designer has three panes. This is a place called as a workspace, and this is the navigator window, and this is the output window. So within the output window, you can check whether the mapping is valid or not. Means whether it contains any error messages or something like it. You can see, you can validate it. So this is how the mapping can be created. Okay, so within the mapping designer, the mapping is created. For every mapping that you create, you require to create the session and the workflow. So session is for running the mapping, and the workflow is for running the session. So you can see here. For every session, for every mapping that you create, you need to create one session. So these are all the different sessions that you have. And this is the workflow. Okay, so workflow basically runs the session. And what does the session contain? Session contains the mapping. So each session that you see here, it contains the mapping. But one workflow is required, minimum one workflow is required in order to run the jobs. So that is the importance of Power Center Workflow Manager. So here you can create workflows and the sessions. And when you run this job, see, when I start the workflow monitor window automatically open, and here you can see how the jobs are running. So how the job is running, what is the why it got failed, what is the purpose of the failure, what is the error message, and how many source records were there, how many targets records were loaded, so you can see the number of count also. I mean the count of the records also, like how it is extracted and how it is loaded, and what are the rejected records, what are the affected records. So all these things can be done by using the Informatica Workflow Monitor. So this is about the four client tools that we have it. Okay. At the same time, you have, in order to perform the admin activities, you have another client tool called as a Informatica Admin Console. So this is the Informatica Admin Console where all the admin related activities can be performed. So that is this. It's a web-based tool, means it will make use of any web browser, whether it is a Google Chrome or Firefox or whatever. So it will make use of any web browser, and it will basically open this, and this is the place where you can perform all the admin related activities. Okay, so you can see here. So this is the place, Informatica Admin Console. Okay, so as I told you, right, this architecture is built on a SOA, I mean service-oriented architecture. So these are all the different services. So based on the requirement, these services has to be created. Okay, right. So any questions on this? Are we clear so far? Are we clear so far? Any questions?
I'm good, Venkat.
I'm good too. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Fine. Yeah. So this is about how it works. And so Amit, this is the first session, right, for you?
Yes, it's the first session.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. So, I mean, do you have any prior IT experience, and why you're looking for this particular training?
Well, Venkat, my background is in the financial services,
Okay.
and I feel that a lot of these functions will be outsourced because I'm based in the U.S. So
Right.
I know a few career paths.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm joining this course to
Okay.
see if I can make that transition.
Right. Right. Okay.
I did listen to the previous two recordings.
Right.
One of the requirements is good knowledge of SQL, which I don't have. So I mean, just letting you know, I'm fairly new to this. So
Okay.
please bear with me.
Yeah, but you need to. I mean, you have to practice SQL, so that is very important.
I
Okay.
have a basic understanding of SQL. I'm not completely
Right. I understood
familiar.
that. I understood that. But yeah, you need to practice SQL very well because most of the stuff, when you go to the real world, it will be on SQL itself. So yeah, so it is very important to know. So anyway, I'm going to share the videos of SQL. So just acquaint with that. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So that's all for today, and we'll meet in the next class tomorrow at the same time, and we'll talk about the architecture of how exactly Informatica Power Center works. The architecture. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you,
Venkat,
guys. Yeah.
I have a question. Tomorrow, what time? How is everything structured? Because this is my first class, and do do you want me to speak to Ashwini about the
Yes.
details?
Yes. Ashwini will tell you. I mean, she'll call you after the session is done, so you can speak with her. Okay.
Okay,
So
great.
if you have any questions, she'll conference me. That should be fine.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, Shiva. Bye.
Venkat, I have one personal question.
Yes.
If I'm using that Informatica for big data migration or otherwise big data access, so which
Okay.
tool or otherwise, which are all things I need to get to know?
Uh, Big data. See, big data means what concept of? I mean, which tool of big data you're saying?
Actually,
You
CSA.
mean
It's the data lake
CSI?
kind of.
CSI. Okay. No, see, basically, big data. I mean, if you can read the data from big data, any big data application. Okay. And I mean, how you're relating the power center to big data? I'm not really getting it.
Okay, I think I can get some clear idea tomorrow, so I can discuss with you. Currently, I also don't have any correct information.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So we'll see that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you.